Hi, my name's Therese Kerr, and I've been speaking for many years about how we have an alarming high rate of infertility. 1 in 7 women are considered infertile. 70% of women have some hormone-related disorder. Men now account for almost half of all fertility challenges, and semen count is dropping by about 1% per annum. Now, it's very challenging to have babies. In today's world, IVF clinics are popping up everywhere, and what I want to speak with you today about in particular is, what if you are blessed to actually be able to have a baby? What if you have tried for 9 years to have a baby and then haven't been able to have a child? 4 years of IVF that's been unsuccessful, and then eventually the nurse kindly donates an egg and you're able to have babies. This is what happened to friends of ours, Nyomi and Zane Holm. They fought for so long to have babies, and then they finally ended up falling pregnant. Nyomi finally ended up falling pregnant with little twins. Nyomi had a horrendous pregnancy. She was in hospital for the last 3 months of her pregnancy, and then the twins were born 1 month early. What happened after that is a nightmare that is happening worldwide with many, many people. So Nyomi and Zane had twins. She felt from the moment that one of the twins was born that something was wrong with him. His name is Pax. She spoke with the doctor about her concerns, but her mother's intuition was ignored. She and the babies were allowed to go home after 4 weeks being in hospital. They were discharged within 1 week of being, within 3 weeks of being discharged. Unfortunately, Pax had a medical episode and was rushed to hospital. Nyomi was holding Pax when the ambulance officer arrived, and she said that the ambulance officer said that he was having a seizure. He was rushed to hospital. Within 2 days, they were charged with harming their baby. Nyomi and Zane didn't harm their baby, and they were not going to plead guilty to something they didn't do.
This is stuff you see on the movies, not in my life.
We didn't realise that the worst was yet to come.
I do believe it was love at first sight. We talked about wanting a family from the very first night.
We've fought for years to have kids. We decided to go down the path of IVF, 4 goes of IVF, and we got 2 beautiful boys out of it.
We made babies. I remember being so grateful.
Beautiful boy.
We were starting a family and we were going to live happily ever after.
I love you. Yes, he said he loves you.
Pax had this motley skin. He was a completely different colour. I remember saying, is there an issue with his blood? But the doctors and the paediatricians, and they're telling you nothing's wrong. Where do you go from there? It wasn't long after that our world came crashing down.
It was a Sunday, and I noticed that one of the boys was crying, and it was Pax, and he was turning blue in colour. I rang the ambulance.
Ambulance emergency, what town or suburb?
And I sat in the back with Pax, and we went to the hospital. Pax goes straight into a room. The doctors put Nye and I in a room next door to Pax.
We were scared for Pax. I knew something was wrong with him from the moment he was born. And I thought, they're going to find it. They're going to find it. What came out of their mouths next, I was definitely not ready for.
The doctors walked in and said, well, one of you two have hurt him.
Someone has shaken your baby. the hell are they talking about? Those babies were more than loved and wanted. And I said to them, are you going to continue looking for what's wrong with him? And they said, no, there is nothing else wrong with him.
Just to digress for a little minute, when Nyomi was holding little Pax and he was having the seizure and the ambulance officer stated he was having a seizure, Nyomi said to the ambulance officer that that was happening at the hospital, but her concerns were ignored by the doctors and the nurses. To cut a very long story short, 2 days after Pax was admitted to the hospital after having suffered his medical episode, unbeknownst to Nyomi and Zane, Pax was deemed to have had what is called the Triad of injuries, so brain bleeding, retinal hemorrhage and a bridging vein injury, which actually turned out not to be true. However, the accusations were made, and unfortunately around the world, not just in Australia, if you present at a hospital with such injuries, you are guilty until proven innocent and simultaneously charged with harming your baby. Zane was thrown into jail. Nyomi fought to get him out. He was released on appeal. However, he was still charged, and that very night that he was released, the police and docs raided their home and took their babies from them. For a week, Nyomi and Zane didn't know where their babies were, and he was under such suspicion they were not allowed to live together as a family. Nyomi and Zane fought to get their babies back. They were released to Nyomi, but she had to live with her mother, and Zane was only allowed to see the babies on a couple of hours, if not an hour a week as such. So they couldn't live together as a family for around 3.5 years while he was fighting the charges against him. In the process of fighting the charges against Zane, they lost everything. They lost their house. They were a middle-class working family who had their own home. They lost their house. They lost their savings. They lost their children for a period of time, and they lost the most precious moments of raising their beautiful little babies, which was turned into a nightmare and stress. To cut a very long story short, again, after 3.5 years, the charges were dropped against Zane. It was discovered that Pax had a genetic blood clotting disorder known as CVST. Zane has a genetic blood clotting disorder, as does Zane's father. So this should have been identified at the very start. One simple blood test would have saved this family from going through this nightmare. And this is repeated around the world. This is not an isolated incident.
This is not a dystopian nightmare. This is a true story. And it's the story that is repeated day in, day out all over the world. In Sweden, in France, in Australia, New Zealand. And what all of these stories have in common is that a doctor has made the diagnosis of shaken baby syndrome.
Some of the experts, they were believers in the shaken baby theory back in the 90s and probably early 2000s.
You were referred to as the grandfather of shaken baby syndrome.
Well, I didn't, in fact, invent that name. I was against defining this thing as a syndrome in the first instance.
There's no validation of the accuracy of that diagnostic process.
The biomechanical research indicates if a baby has been shaken, that you will have neck damage. That will occur first before you get problems in the head.
The damage to the neck will come before any damage to the brain. So if there's no damage to the neck, that's a sign that this baby was not shaken. In case after case, there's no damage to the neck, yet shaking is asserted.
In the shaken baby cases that I have defended both in the children's court and also the criminal courts, I bring in medical evidence to show that there is a natural medical explanation for what happened to the child.
These children, they can have a genetic condition, a medical condition, a rare genetic condition. So there's a number of things that we now know can cause these findings.
Once a medical practitioner in a child protection unit sees subdural hemorrhages, bleeding on the brain, or retinal hemorrhages, bleeding in the eyes, bang, bang, you end up with a shaken baby allegation, and the whole thing just escalates from there on in.
She said, I've got a court order to remove the twins from you, from your care.
They took away our babies that we've fought hard for 4+ years to have.
I just remember not knowing when the next time I would see them. And this scream that came out of me, I had no control over it.
As stated, their court case was dropped. However, there was no explanation, no apology, and no compensation given whatsoever. They were just left to pick up their lives. Now, unfortunately, as mentioned, this is happening to so many people around the world. Nyomi and Zane were never going to plead guilty to a crime they didn't commit. They were told, Zane was told to plead guilty. He refused. He was told that he would go away for a long time if he didn't plead guilty. Now, we have other families all around the world. Just recently we received a plea from Robert Robertson, who is on death row in Texas. His lawyers reached out to us and asked for our help. We are actually putting together and creating a documentary, and we have submitted that documentary to Angel Studios. Only 5% of the submissions at Angel Studios pass. We have passed the first stage, but we need your help now to vote yes to get this documentary made, as that's the only way it will be made. Yes, you will have to sign up to become a guild member, and it will cost you $12 US for the month. So you need to go to your computer and sign up on your computer, create your login and password, sign out, and then click on the link in my Instagram bio to be able to then vote for this documentary to be made. I am pleading with you to please support this, because we have families. For instance, it is not uncommon while people are waiting for their trial, for the date when they will appear in court, the mother will fall pregnant again, and then we have instances where we know that that child, they've been told that they will take that baby once she has that baby. We have other people who have gone to jail, all their children have been removed from them, and they haven't been able to get them back. Again, this is happening in Australia, in Europe, so France, in England, in Scotland, in Japan, all over the world. And we are aligning ourselves with organisations globally to be able to make a difference. We've started a not-for-profit organisation called the Parental Voice, and you can just go straight to that on the internet, and you can watch the trailer, or please instead just go straight to the Angel Studios link, as I said in my bio, and vote. You will need to say yes, this documentary, you'll be disappointed if it doesn't get made. You'll need to say that it amplifies light, as it does, because Angel Studios only promotes documentaries or produces documentaries like The Sound of Freedom. Although it was a very, very, very disturbing subject, it shone a light on an industry. We're shining a light on an industry, unfortunately, that needs to have a light shine on it. And also I recommend that you leave remarks and comments as to why you believe this documentary needs to be made. So why am I involved in this? Well, I never knew it existed until our friends went through this. There's a silent epidemic that surrounds this, and that's because parents do not have the right to speak out when they are being charged. It's a law. They can't speak out about this. So unfortunately, it remains not known to the public. Why are we creating this documentary? To create awareness, to generate public awareness and an outcry that will cause the science to be reviewed, because it needs to be reviewed. The science of this is based on a hypothesis of 1971, 53-year-old hypothesis that has never been challenged. And unfortunately, Dr. Norman Guthkelch, who you'll see in the mini film where you go to vote for the documentary to be made, he actually states, the original founder of this hypothesis states that it was never meant to be the science. There are scientists all over the world, pathologists, neuropathologists, forensic scientists, biomechanical engineers speaking out saying it is impossible for this to cause the injuries that they're stating, that the hypothesis is defunct and outdated. And what we are asking through this documentary is for the public to have the ability to cause the science to be reviewed vigorously. So I thank you from the bottom of my heart, from the hearts of Nyomi and Zane, and from the many families who are currently incarcerated for a crime they didn't commit. And I also ask you to support this documentary to prevent future families from going through this, to help those families who are incarcerated for crimes they didn't commit, to help return children to their homes, and to create the public awareness that is needed to be able to achieve all of that.
There are thousands of cases throughout the world of innocent people who have had their children taken from them after accusations have been made of shaken baby syndrome.
She told the judge, "Please don't take me away from my children."
There is this one incident where the child collapses, becomes floppy, and the parents decide to call emergency services. Then potentially one of the parents could be facing a grievous bodily harm charge or a manslaughter charge, which could be 9 years of jail.
In the United States, some 2,500 people are in prison, 5 of them on death row awaiting their execution.
Having the worst thing that can happen, which is your infant dying, often in your own arms, and then being accused of killing that child that's unimaginable.
All of a sudden there was a bang, bang, bang at the door, and in walk uniformed police.
The female detective laughed and she said, "You do realise you're going to go away for a long time for this."
He just looked broken. In the 10 years that I'd been with Zane, I'd never seen him look like that.
Were you surprised to learn that prosecutors were using your research as a basis to convict people?
Yes, absolutely and utterly shocked. To go on to say every time you see it, it's a crime, it became a sort of easy way into jail.
I've looked in great detail at the literature on shaken baby syndrome. I've gone through the whole history of shaken baby syndrome and read as much as I can, and I have found nothing which satisfies me that there's any scientific foundation for it.
We're using junk science to take children away and put people in jail, and that's wrong. We should not be doing it.
It's embedded in our system, it's within the police force, it's within our judiciary, it's within our medical society, and it's not science. It's horrific and it's wrong.
What I know today,
Little Pax has a condition, a blood clotting condition called CVST. It can cause seizures and swelling. One blood test from the hospital could have told us that he had this condition.
Do you love that you're twins?
Yeah, but who's that?
That's Zen.
Who's that?
Cheers.
No, you can't remember.
We need to tell our story because we know the truth.
If it can happen to us, it can happen to anyone.
No one has shaken my baby.